Pursues the others across the marshes and is right on top of them when Kong appears and smashes a rock onto the Skullcrawler. As the group flees, the Skullcrawler recovers and turns to face Kong. Standing only a small way shorter than the gigantic gorilla, the crawler leaps and bites into Kong's arm. Kong shakes it off, then the crawler comes back and locks its jaws around Kong's throat. Kong grips the tips of the crawler's jaws and prizes them apart. The crawler fights to stop its jaw breaking. Kong slams its head into the mountain and misses with an elbow attack. The crawler bites the same arm and keeps coming as Kong struggles to keep it at bay. Weaver reaches the apex of the rocks and points a flare gun into the sky. She fires the glowing red flare which erupts in the clouds above the battling monsters. Conrad and co spin around as shining red debris rains down around Kong, who uproots a tree. He holds it with both hands and strips the branches from the trunk in one swift move. The Skullcrawler rises, then charges. Kong barrels forward, swinging the tree trunk like a baseball bat. The trunk cracks in two as the crawler reels into the marshes. The bony lizard-like crawler springs up and leaps. Kong grabs its neck in midair, but it wraps its tail around his body and lands a talon rip on his head, then throws Kong with its muscular tail. He lands on his back, smashing into a shipwreck. As he tries to rise, he finds the ship's chains wrapped around his chest and arms, pinning him down. The Skullcrawler roars triumphantly in his face, its long multi-split tongue lashing grotesquely. Bullets strike the Skullcrawler, which reels and turns. Brooks is at the dual gun canopy on the Grey Fox, piloted by Miss Sam. Brooks keeps up the barrage as Conrad leads the others.
Come on! Go!
They sprint for the boat.
Come on! Hurry!
Brooks rocks around manically as the Skullcrawler turns towards them, heading into the gunfire. The bullets stop firing and Brooks struggles to work the reload mechanism as the crawler stalks over a shipwreck. The others board the Grey Fox and Marlowe joins Brooks at the bow of the boat.
Marlowe, help me out! She's temporary! Watch her!
The crawler stomps remorselessly towards them. Kong fights to rise and pulls at the chains that have wrapped around his arms and body. The crawler keeps on towards the Grey Fox, which looks tiny and weak in its path. Kong roars and lunges forward forcefully. A couple of the chains around his shoulders snap free. He continues to strain forwards and more as the chains break. Marlowe is still reloading as the Skullcrawler closes in, its sharp and sinister frame like a nightmare. On the rocks above, Weaver loads another flare. Kong finds his wrists still chained to the rusting propeller of the shipwreck. Weaver aims at the crawler and fires the flare. It strikes the crawler's head and explodes, leaving a burning shell wedged in its temple. It reels and tries to scrape the flare free.
Clear! Clear!
Marlowe and the soldiers open fire.
Come on, you bastard!
Conrad leaps overboard and runs away from the Grey Fox. The Skullcrawler lurches to follow him. Kong breaks the propeller from the ship. He swings it on the chain and it lands embedded in the crawler's shoulder. The two-legged lizard is cut down and it thrashes around in agony. Conrad and the team on the boat look hopeful as Kong drags the crawler backwards, wraps the chain around the thrashing creature's neck and tugs it down into the shallows. Water's kicked up as they struggle. Kong clamps the Skullcrawler's jaws closed, then slams it over his shoulder before swinging it by his tail and hurling it into the mountainside. The shockwave sends Weaver flying from the rocks above and she plummets. Conrad spots her.
Weaver!
She lands in the water unconscious. Distracted by Weaver, Kong doesn't spot the crawler lurching back at him and he's knocked over. Kong recovers and pounds his fists into the sinewy monster, leaving a deep cut on its back. Out cold, Weaver sinks deeper and deeper. Kong rounds on the crawler with the propeller held in his left fist. He lands a blow with his right. He smacks the propeller onto the crawler's head, and as the crawler looks up, he throws an uppercut and slices the crawler's throat open with the rusty propeller blades. The crawler drops unmoving, and Kong lets go of the propeller. He reaches under the water with a mighty hand. His fingers unfurl and gently gather Weaver from the murk. Trailing a waterfall from his fingers, he lifts Weaver out of the river, holding her in his right palm. Suddenly, the crawler rears up and bites into Kong's arm. The crawler tumbles head over heels, then leaps back at Kong, who holds it at bay by the neck. Keeping his right fist bunched up, he tries to protect Weaver. The crawler wraps its long tongue around his right arm. Kong thrusts his fist down the crawler's gaping throat and yanks its whole tongue out in a sickening splatter of blood and guts. The crawler goes instantly limp, and Kong discards its broken body. He opens his right fist and finds Weaver still lying out cold in his palm. He very gently lays the back of his hand on the bank by the shallow marshes and deposits Weaver on the ground. Conrad wades through the water in a hurry as Kong walks away from the scene. Conrad spots Weaver's camera and